this is where I'm at on my current project, and I'm very tempted to stop here, but I have an idea, or at least a vision of where I want to go. This basically is drop cloth with wet distressing. Now, in order to be able to wet distress, it's very helpful to not put a really thick layer on there and then wipe it off before it sets. So basically, I painted it one coat really quick, really light, and then I went right into wet distressing. So if you like this look, it was really fast. So it's a great look. I don't think it would not be good for me to sand it. So wet distressing is a great finish, but you have to, you can only do that if you have a very thin coat, and I think it worked out well. But this is what I'm considering my base coat. I'm gonna go over it with vintage duck egg and leave this drop cloth color as a reveal or peeking through color. But I will also wet distress the vintage duck egg. So I think that's gonna be my goal. It's a really stunning piece, so I wanna be respectful to it from a standpoint of I'm not doing something too crazy with it. In fact, the top, I'm gonna leave original stained. I'm not gonna re-stain it. I'm just gonna kind of freshen it up again, touch it up if you will. I think that'll look great. And I really considered doing a blend on here, a nice rich color, but it just kept speaking more rural to me. I don't have any mirror for it, so I just thought it's wanted to be casual. But just a beautiful piece. So let's keep going with it. Again, I'm gonna go with vintage duck egg. And I'm gonna do the exact same technique that I did on the drop cloth. I'm gonna do with vintage duck egg. So when I wet distress, it will have the same result where it's going to be random. And I don't know if I'm gonna put it, well, let's kind of see how it goes. I'm not sure I'm gonna put as much vintage duck egg on the second coat, but we'll kind of just go with it and see how the piece speaks to us. And yeah, I think you see how it's just kind of a light coat. I want a lot of the drop cloth to shine through. I had considered using buttercream, but I didn't want it to be so white. Buttercream is much lighter than drop cloth, so I think we're just going to do a little bit of this. I can always add more, but it's hard to take it off. If you went too far, it's a little harder to do. And I'm keeping this very thin. My paint has actually been freshly stirred and it's nice and loose. It's not dried and thick. In the back of my mind, worst case scenario, if I don't like this direction, we'll do something else. But if you missed my latest podcast last Monday morning, I talked about editing. And editing is basically changing your mind, making adjustments. So my way of adjusting this would be to, if I don't like the look of it, is either add another color or just start over. But as I mentioned in my podcast, I rarely start over because someone's gonna love this. And you can get really beat up in your brain about it's not what you wanted it to be, but probably if you really think about it, somebody's looking for this exact piece and they'll pay a mint for it, right? So keep in mind, remember I've already wet distressed this. And let me show you just real quick how lovely that's coming together. You can, we should be able to maintain that same look because I'm only putting a light coat. I'm not really worried. I'm not trying to do what sometimes I'll call cross hatching, where I do left, horizontal. I really am just painting this on. And the wet distressing will vary this overall look. So if it gets to the point that you're starting to feel like it's too polished, the wet distressing will bring it back to its worn look. And I wanted this to look like because it's an antique, that the paint has worn off over time. I guess maybe some might call it a distressed or chippy look, but there's no chippy to it. I don't really do the chippy look. Not that I don't like it, but it does not take much pressure, and you don't need a really super wet rag to wet distress, but you're going with a faux look of age and worn. I'm not putting tons of paint on. I mentioned earlier about not painting thick. The front was a little tricky on this cabinet panels. It's like, do I go left? Do I go up and down? The answer is yes, all the above. So I just try to keep not too crazy. What I mean by crazy is not a lot of crisscross and angled, but you can do that. I'm not saying it's wrong. Just I chose to go more of a vertical. Like there's vertical boards and horizontal boards, so you can follow the wood grain. That might be a nice plan. To get the paint in there, I'm not trying to cover all the paint up because that's part of the color palette. That wood tone is acting as a third color. I'm using the Dixie Belle mini brush right now. How easy it is just to get the color on there. You don't need much color on your brush. Just spread it out. If you put too much on there, you'll be just covering the whole piece, and that's not the look. So I literally am doing about the same amount of work as I did the first coat, just quick, fast. Keep it somewhat like organized. Don't be too crazy, but as I always say, do what you want to do. I'm just kind of showing you how I got the look and finish. And as I mentioned before, when you're wet distressing, get the first coat done and go back to the beginning and start into it. So you see how, so this rag is just, it's been sitting around all afternoon, kind of wet, not wet, but just, it has some wetness to it. Like it feels cold, then it's probably wet. I'm just looking for places to bring that wood back in. So at this point, I don't have a lot of, it's not too thick coats of paint. It's really thin coats of paint. So feel free to just go in there. You can see here I kind of rubbed off the paint and I didn't get to the wood. If I kept rubbing hard enough, I would get the wood. But I really like that contrast of the wood, and it goes back to the color theory, color harmony we've been talking about off and on. So if we talk about color harmony, the wood and the drop cloth are warm colors and the vintage duck egg is cool colors, so they're complement. Let's put a little bit of, see if we can get some wood. There we go. The magic really happens, and the only reason why I chose this this technique is because it has incredible details. When there's no details, the wet distressing just doesn't sing, if you will. Okay, I'm kind of excited. I want to show you how gorgeous that looks. So the two-tone color really does the job. As I mentioned a while ago, I loved how it looked before I put the vintage duck egg on there, but to me it looks just as good. This is me personally, it looks just as good with two colors on it. And the more I reveal the wood color, I get that nice pop color. And so if you're not getting wood showing up, you're not rubbing hard enough, or you put too much paint on, or your rag's not wet enough. Giving her new life, and I'm rubbing off where a lot of wear and tear would probably happen if this had been painted 100 years ago and it just got warmed off. So the hardware is a natural place to do that because it got a lot of, touching over the years. But this technique is so easy. Probably one of the easiest techniques. It's probably harder to figure out what colors to use than it is to wet distress. Once the chalk paint has set overnight, it's probably going to be harder to wet distress. So again, the key is do it soon after getting the paint on there. It's still a little wet, maybe dry to touch, but it's going to be a little wet still. I'm not saying I'm going to, but you could even go to a third color. Not that I'm going to, but I mean, if you're trying to simulate the idea that it's been painted a few times in its life, why not, right? I mean, that would be a way to do it. This is not messy. Doesn't really create a lot of buildup on your rag. You don't need to wear any kind of gloves or anything like that because your paint's mostly dry. But because this wet rag is wet, I am still able to rub off some of the original drop cloth color as you just randomize rubbing here and there. Let's put some on the edge here. You would almost expect that corners and places closer to someone walking by is going to get a little bit more. The nice thing about this piece is it has all the original hardware. I'm not replacing any of it because it's so original and beautiful. So I'm very happy about that. If tomorrow I look at it and I missed a spot or two, it's possible, it's going to be a little harder to rub off, so just kind of keep that in mind. Now's the time to inspect it and figure out. There we go. Hardware, I'll polish it up, and of course I'll top coat the piece. And I'll put the hardware back on. And in this situation, oftentimes the hardware steals the show, but this is actually one of those pieces where I believe the finish will steal the show and the decorative element. So that's kind of cool. It doesn't always work that way, but in this case it is. Again, I'm just looking for any other natural place that I feel like needs a touch of distressing naturally, like where would be a natural place for that to happen. Cool. And because the top is going to stay like it is, it's complementing all the other colors that I revealed. Sometimes when you wet distress too, the cloudiness of the paint wants to stay. So you might need to come back and actually just wipe off lightly with just a clean area to get the paint off the wood. I'm excited about it. I'm happy that it's come out. Like right here again, see a little bit of a milky look, and that means some of the paint's still there. But wow, what a quick and easy way to transform and add some new energy to a piece. Now, all right, so again, short and sweet tonight, but I definitely wanted to bring you along this quick journey on this project. I'm really excited how that turned out. All right, if you have any questions about the finish or the technique, feel free to message me. All right, I'll sign off. Until next time, you guys be awesome, do something great. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd like to see what you're working on. And thanks so much for watching, and see y'all later. Take care.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye.